He was expelled, stripped of his titles, and yet, the disgrace continues to cost a fortune. Prince Andrew has secured a final, shocking victory against the king, 12 more months of royal luxury. This is the heartbreaking legal loophole that keeps the outcast safe from justice. The disgraced prince is allowed to remain in the Windsor royal residence, which he has called home for more than 20 years, until October 2026, despite being kicked out by the king. Disgraced Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will be allowed to stay in the Royal Lodge for another 12 months, despite being booted out by King Charles. This revelation has triggered not just outrage, but a deep sense of betrayal among a public already weary of the perceived entitlement and immunity surrounding the Duke of York. The drama unfolding within the walls of the sprawling 30-room mansion is a powerful, emotional metaphor for the institution's struggle to excise a painful, costly tumor. The price of peppercorn, the fury over the lease deal. An inquiry has been launched into the Crown Estate and the royal family's residences, after MPs demanded answers on Andrew's lucrative rent deal for the Windsor mansion. This official investigation injects a necessary sense of public accountability into what many see as a private scandal funded by public resources. There was outrage when it emerged Andrew paid £1 million for a 75-year lease of the Grade II listed Royal Lodge mansion in 2003, and since then, he paid one peppercorn of rent if demanded per year. The term peppercorn rent, usually a charming legal fiction, here sounds like a slap in the face to taxpayers struggling with the cost of living. It forced the public spending watchdog, the Public Accounts Committee, dubbed the Queen of Select Committees, to demand answers from both the Treasury and Crown Estate. The committee's intervention highlights the profound emotional disconnect between the gilded life of the royals and the financial anxieties of the average citizen. Today, the committee, which looks into whether taxpayers' money is being wisely spent, published details of the property arrangements provided by Crown Estate Chief Executive Dan Labid. The legal loophole, a final, bitter victory. The details of Andrew's lease were shared, with the termination of lease clause stipulating that despite the fact the disgraced prince was kicked out of the Royal Lodge by King Charles, he is allowed to remain in the 30-room mansion until October 2026. This is the agonizing core of the story. Even the absolute authority of a monarch, King Charles, is temporarily checkmated by a decades-old legal contract. The former prince, stripped of his honor, is clinging to the last vestiges of his former life through bureaucratic resilience. The lease claims that Andrew served a tenant's notice offering to surrender the lease on the Crown Estate on October 30, 2025, giving the minimum 12 months notice as per the terms of the lease. This means that until October 30 next year, the disgraced prince continues to be financially responsible for the ongoing costs of maintenance and repair of the property. Once the property has been handed back to the Crown Estate, it will assume this responsibility. This detail is crucial. The financial burden remains with Andrew, a final, costly duty before his forced exile. Compensation denied, a financial humiliation. The lease also shows that if no end of tenancy repairs were required, Andrew would have been entitled to £488,342.21 for ending his tenancy on October 30, 2026. This potential payout reveals the staggering financial scale of royal property transactions. But the Crown Estate delivered a final, humiliating blow. It said that following an inspection of the property on November 12, it was thought unlikely that any compensation would be paid. Our initial assessment is that while the extent of end-of-tenancy dilapidations and repairs required are not out of keeping with a tenancy of this duration, they will mean in all likelihood that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will not be owed any compensation for early surrender of the lease. Once dilapidations are taken into account, the Crown Estate said. The final act of the Royal Lodge saga is not a quiet surrender, but a financial write-off for the disgraced Duke, adding a layer of fiscal embarrassment to his public shame. The next chapter, Sandringham and the Christmas avoidance. While Andrew is legally allowed to remain in the Royal Lodge for another 12 months, he is poised to relocate to a small residence on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. It has been speculated that the former prince will vacate the Windsor mansion in January to move to Sandringham, in order to avoid any awkward run-ins with the royal family, given that they spend the Christmas period together on the Norfolk estate. The human toll of the scandal is evident in this choice. The former golden boy of the family is now actively arranging his life to avoid the emotional scrutiny and discomfort of a traditional royal Christmas gathering. He is now the family ghost, sequestered to a corner of the estate to maintain the illusion of festive unity. At the end of October, the king officially stripped his disgraced brother Andrew of his HRH style and his prince title, and removed his dukedom from the roll of the peerage over his serious lapses of judgment. This final, decisive action by Charles signals that the patience of the crown has run out. The move followed the publication of a posthumous memoir by Andrew's accuser, Virginia Giuffre, and the U.S. government's release of documents from Epstein's estate. It emerged that Andrew had emailed Epstein in 2011 saying, "We're in this together," 3 months after he claimed he had broken all contact with the convicted sex offender. Andrew denies all wrongdoing. This toxic cocktail of stripped titles, public documents, and the damning "we're in this together" email has eroded any remaining sympathy, cementing his fate as the most devastating personal crisis the modern monarchy has faced. The story of Andrew is the story of a dramatic, heartbreaking fall from grace, driven by a lethal mix of poor judgment and enduring privilege.